Welcome back to Mythic Codex Legends Unveiled, the place where mythology, folklore, and legends come alive. I'm your host Eliza, and tonight we'll uncover the stories that have captivated humanity for thousands of years. Turn the page, our journey begins now. There are some dead who stay dead. Their hearts stop, their bodies grow cold, their names become a memory. And then there are the ones who don't. Image walking through a quiet Greek village long after midnight. The streets are empty. The windows are dark. Even the dogs have stopped barking. Then, somewhere in the distance, you hear footsteps, slow, heavy, dragging slightly across the stone. You tell yourself it's nothing until you realize something terrifying. The footsteps are getting closer, and then you see a figure standing at the end of the road. A person you know. Someone who has already been buried. Someone who should be dead. Tonight we're entering the world of the Vrykolakas, one of the most disturbing figures in Greek folklore, a creature born from the dead, but somehow not willing to remain there. This is the dead who refuses to stay buried. The story of the Vrykolakas comes from Greek folklore, particularly traditions surrounding death, burial, the soul, and what could happen when the natural order was somehow disturbed. The word itself is generally associated with a reanimation, corpse, a dead person who returns from the grave and begins hunting the living. But here's where the legend gets especially fascinating. The Vrykolakas wasn't necessarily imaged as a monster who had always been evil. Sometimes the terrifying transformation was believed to happen after death because of the way a person has lived. The circumstances surrounding their death or the way their body was treated after they were buried. In traditional beliefs, certain people were considered more vulnerable to become restless dead. Those who had lived sinful or cursed lives. Those who had died under unusual circumstances. Those who had been excommunicated. And in some traditions, even those who had violent sources, religion, or social taboos. The grave was supposed to be the final resting place, but the Vrykolakas represents the horrifying possibility that death hasn't finished the job. Picture a corpse climbing out of its grave. Not a skeleton, not a rotting monster covered in chains. Something much more disturbing. A human being. Recognizable, familiar, almost normal. The Vrykolakas could supposedly walk among the living, sometimes appearing much as if it has been alive. And that is what makes the legend so unsettling, because if the dead thing looked like a monster, you would know to run. But what if it looked like your neighbor, your friend, your mother, your brother, someone you trusted? So here's my first question of the night. If someone you loved appeared at your front door tonight, but you knew they had already died, Would you open the door, or would you run? Think about that. Because according to the folklore, opening the door could be the worst decision you ever made. See, if I knew that that person was dead for certain and I saw them be put into the ground, I definitely would not open that door. I would keep it shut. Because whatever that is not my friend or family member or loved one. It's not. It's someone who looks like them, but it's not them. In some traditional accounts, villagers become suspicious when something seems terribly wrong with a corpse after burial. Perhaps the grave was disturbed. Perhaps strange noises were heard. Perhaps people claimed that the deceased had been seen walking through the village. And then came one of the most horrifying possibilities. The body might be dug up. Image standing in a cemetery surrounded by darkness. The shovel breaks through the earth. The grave opens, and everyone waits to see what is underneath. Instead of finding nothing but bones, they find a corpse that appears strangely preserved. A body that should have decayed. A body that somehow doesn't look completely dead. And suddenly, everyone realizes the same thing. Something has gone wrong. The Vrykolakas wasn't simply terrifying because it returned. It was terrifying because of what it supposedly did afterwards. Stories describe the creature wandering through the village, knocking on doors and calling out people's names. And here's one of the most chilling ideas connected to the legend. If the Vrykolakas called your name, you were not supposed to answer because responding could supposedly put you in danger. Image laying awake in bed. Your entire body is silent. Then you freeze. Then you hear a voice outside. It's your name. Not a stranger's voice. Someone you recognize. Someone who shouldn't be standing outside your house. Now here's my second question. If you heard someone you loved calling your name from outside your bedroom tonight, would you answer? Or would you stay completely silent because sometimes the scariest thing isn't knowing what's outside, it's wondering whether it knows you're awake? I'm definitely not answering. I'm staying silent. No, thank you. Nope. Not today. And this is where the Vrykolakas stories becomes truly gruesome. Some traditions describe people attempting to stop the creature by opening its grave and destroying the corpse. Depending on the version of the story, methods could involve burning the body, destroying it, or otherwise ensuring the corpse could never rise again. Image the scene. A crowd gathering around an open grave. Torches flickering against frightened faces. The smell of damp earth filling the air. The dead body laying beneath them. And everyone standing there wondering, what if it moves? What if opens its eyes? What if the thing in the grave isn't finished with them? The fear wasn't simply about killing a monster. It was about making absolutely certain that the dead stayed dead. See, here's my thing about that. So, back then, um, it was actually pretty common for them to bury someone who was alive. Like, just in case they didn't bury their loved ones alive, they used to attach a string to their finger and a bell would be on the other side so that the person that was watching the cemetery could hear that bell just in case they weren't dead. It was a thing. Like, because nowadays they didn't have all the technology and medicine we have now. It did happen where they did occasionally accidentally bury their loved ones alive. It happened. So the thing with this story is that it could be a possibility that they were still alive when they were buried. But in this kind of context, I don't think so. I don't think that was what happened, but that is something to think about when you're hearing this story. That probably could have been a possibility. But I don't think that's what is happening here. But we will never know. One of the most fascinating parts of the Vrykolakas folklore is how these stories could become warnings within communities. A mysterious death, a strange sighting, someone hearing footsteps outside, a door opening in the middle of the night, a person claiming they saw someone who had already been buried. One story could become another and another until the entire village believed that something was walking after dark. And once fear took hold, every unexplained sound became evidence. A shadow moving past a window, a knock at the door, a dog barking at an empty street, footsteps outside. The imagination can turn an ordinary night into a nightmare. And that's exactly what makes folklore so powerful. But here's the question I keep coming back to. What if the Vrykolakas wasn't terrifying because it was a creature? What if it was terrifying because it represented something humans have feared for thousands of years? The possibility that the death isn't always the end. The fear that someone you buried might not stay buried. The fear that the grave might not be a boundary. Because when we close a coffin and lower it into the earth, we want to believe that everything is finished. The Vrykolakas says, maybe it isn't. So here's my third question for you guys. Let's make this one personal. Image you're walking home alone. You pass an old cemetery. It's completely dark. Then you notice someone standing between the graves. You recognize them immediately, but you also remember attending their funeral. They look at you. They smile. And then they say your name. What do? Do you run? Do you scream? Or do you stand there, trying to convince yourself that what you're seeing isn't possible? I'd run. I'd get the hell out of there. I am not staying there. There's no way I'm letting that thing come anywhere closer to me. Bye bye. Adios. No thank you. I'm not doing that. Stories like the Vrykolakas survive because they touch something deeply in humans. Fear of death, fear of burial, fear of the unknown, and perhaps most importantly, fear of losing control. We can lock our doors. We can bury our dead. We can light candles. We can pray. But folklore reminds us that there are some fears that cannot be locked outside. And the Vrykolakas became the embodiment of one of them, the dead returning home. Now image that Greek village one more time. The sun has disappeared, the streets are empty, the cemetery sits quietly beyond the houses. Everyone is asleep until someone hears footsteps, one step, then another, then another. A figure moving through the darkness. It stops at the first house. It moves to the next. Still nothing. Then it reaches one particular house. The figure raises its hand and inside, someone wakes. They sit up in bed. They listen. And then they hear a voice. Their name. They know that voice. They know exactly who is standing outside. But that person has been dead for years. The voice calls again. And this time, the person inside walks towards the door. Their hands reach for the handle. They hesitate. Because somewhere deep inside, they remember the warning. Never answer the dead. The handle begins to turn. And that's where I want to leave you. Because maybe the most terrifying question isn't whether the Vrykolakas was real. Maybe it's this. What would you do if the dead came knocking? I know what I would do. So, here's my final question. Would you open the door? I definitely wouldn't open the door. What would you do? Let me know. This has been Mythic Codex Legends Unveiled. I'm your host Eliza, and remember, some legends are meant to be heard, but some are better left buried.